Good afternoon and welcome to the 13th edition of the Global UAE Energy Forum, where every year at the beginning of January we take a year ahead energy outlook. And this is a look in the crystal ball, as we all might like to think, of the year, the 2023, the 12 months ahead of us, and what a 12 months that are behind us. We're honored to be joined to lead off the European section of the forum today, Christina Haverkamp, Managing Director of the German Energy Agency. And Christina, I think the most counterintuitive data point that I saw on reflection of 2022 was the fact that the German economy hit its peak employment since the reunification of with West Germany and East Germany now 30 something years ago, and in this crazy year that has just passed, where you thought Germany was going to drive off the cliff and into some valley of great uncertainty, it reached its record employment. So my question to you on this January, beginning of 2023, what is the state of Germany's economy and this energy crisis? Why is it not in any way disrupting the performance of the German economy?
Well, first of all, Sean, thanks a lot for having me. And yes, indeed, I appreciate that you are starting on a positive note, and there is reason for that. Our employment market is boosting, which is good news, but which is also bad news, because I know a lot of companies, including the German Energy Agency, that are desperately looking for experts, which are difficult to obtain and getting more and more expensive. Also, the good news is that our inflation is below 10% again. It looked differently end of last year, but we can see that the measures taken by the government, in particular to reduce energy prices, are taking effect. And the inflation was mostly, not exclusively, but mostly due to indeed the rise in energy prices resulting from the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So I think we have reason to be optimistic for the coming years, and the surveys say that our companies believe that they may even profit from what is happening in China right now, meaning that we can step in for production that is not coming from an area of the world which used to be the strongest growth driver globally. And these are good news in times of a lot of bad news.
We saw in 2022, Christina, that Germany had to prioritize short-term energy security over perhaps, and that's the question, over long-term energy transition, turning to coal-fired power plants, obviously ramping up the import of LNG to replace pipeline gas from Russia. My question to you is, the prioritizing of short-term energy security, will that continue in 2023? And does it jeopardize Germany's commitment to the energy transition?
I think quite the opposite is the case. Our supply problems regarding gas from Russia, which used to contribute a little more than 50% of our gas to our gas demand in Germany. So our supply problems have very much raised the awareness that we need to become independent, and independent means basically even more renewable energy carriers than we had been aiming for. So we have raised our ambition in terms of deployment of renewable energies to 80% by 2030, which means doubling basically the share in electricity production which we have right now. At the same time, we have taken, well, short-term steps to reduce energy and in particular gas and electricity consumption, which take effect. In the Christmas week, we had 24% less consumption than in the year before. And we believe that energy prices that will not remain on the present level, but are unlikely to go back to the low level we had prior to the war.
I mean, if you take that just to sort of question so that we have clarity from your point of view, there is a sense that this winter in Europe and in Germany has been unusually warm. And so the energy crisis that was to translate into perhaps an existential challenge over the winter has not happened, primarily because of the maybe climate change, you might say, not necessarily because of renewables, not because of the move to greater coal, but the fact that it's just been warmer than usual. Is that an explanation or not?
Well, it's not quite correct, actually.
Okay.
Since Christmas, after Christmas, it has turned very warm indeed in Germany. Right now, we have spring temperatures. Those are likely to decline, but not below zero. By contrast, before Christmas, we had a couple of weeks where we had -6, -10 degrees, which is extremely cold for German winters. So this is kind of leveling out. Of course, temperature does have an influence on gas consumption, but we don't see that as having that much of an impact on the reductions which we see as compared to last year.
We're seeing in 2022 and again in 2023, I mean, some very pioneering, unprecedented on some level decisions made by the German government towards military spending, but also towards debt and subsidies around energy in order to shield what they call the defensive shield to protect companies and households. The Germany government has set aside 200+ billion euros. I'm wondering, what is your outlook for that continued approach, which typically the German government has avoided in the past? Will that sustain, and what impact is it likely to have on consumption?
You have mentioned the 200 billion euro defensive shield. This will be partly financed through debts, but it will also be partly financed through what we call a tax on over earnings. Due to the merit order principle, I suppose you're familiar with that, and the high gas prices, in particular our nuclear power plants, but also our renewable power plants earn much, much more than they did prior to the rise in gas prices. And the government will be taking 90% of these over earnings by means of taxes until 2024 and use that income to cross-subsidize the defensive shield. All defensive shield measures are limited in time. And as I said, we expect the prices to go further down after next year. Prices of, in particular, gas, okay, but also electricity as a result. And this is why our protective shield measures are limited in time until 2023 end of or 2024, depending on the measure. And when they have gone back to a lower level, but they will not have gone back to what we have perceived as normal, there will be a new normal. Then we would expect the energy saving component and the rise in renewables to kick in to help to alleviate the burden that will remain at that time. Of course, the amount of prices will very much depend, both, as you said, on weather factors, but also on the picking up of the, I think in particular, the Chinese economy, which is being not a demander of energy to the extent that it used to be, and that does have an impact on global.
And if you assume that the Chinese will overcome this COVID nightmare as the rest of the world has done at some point, maybe in the second half of the year, what sort of challenge does that present to Germany and to Europe, do you think, from an energy point of view?
Yeah, I would assume that that will raise the prices in particular for LNG gas, and we will be substituting 1/3 of our, well, we will be providing for about 1/3 of our gas demand through LNG by the end of next year. This is a result of our stocking up the LNG terminals, both floating and in the long-term fixed build in Germany.
So mainly in the price of LNG. I'm hearing from you, Christina, that perhaps Germany and Europe has avoided this energy crisis, this sort of big scare of 2022. Is that over now as we look into 2023? This existential threat, obviously the closure or the serious winding down of imports from Russia into Europe, that Europe has managed that, and this energy crisis is over. This energy security crisis is now conquered.
I wouldn't go that far. I think we have another winter to face. And one does have to be realistic. The fact that we are dealing quite well with this winter is also due to the fact that, at least in Germany, the storage facilities are full, and they're partly still full due to Russian gas. So we will need to look at the next winter where there will not be any Russian gas in any storage facility Europe-wide, I would assume, at least not pipeline gas. And there are a lot of measures being undertaken, including, as I said, building LNG terminals, including routes on energy saving, including campaigns on energy saving. That's an important aspect, I think, awareness.
And do you expect them to bed in long term?
I would expect those indeed to bed in long term, because it's a matter of experience. I can tell from my own experience. I've always been heating quite liberally. I enjoyed it warm. Now I see that I can do with 2 sweaters without feeling uncomfortable, and turn down the heating, which makes living costs cheaper. And that's an experience which a lot of citizens make right now, that it's not a problem to live with less energy than before.
And of course, it reduces your own carbon footprint. And if indeed we get a carbon price, then that economic benefit of less is even more pronounced. But ultimately, Christina, it would appear that the era, I mean, however large we want to play that, of the last 30, 40 years, even the post-Second World War, 70 years, that Germany has enjoyed a very integrated and intimate relationship with Russian energy has come to an end. And with it, one would think a lower cost of energy. And now we're starting a Germany that is going to face, over the decades ahead, a higher energy cost. Your thoughts on that as a thesis, and what impact it will have on the energy policies that Germany should follow?
In fact, I'm convinced that Germany should follow the path that has already been decided upon by the new German coalition in January of last year, meaning expansion of renewable energies fast, which includes reducing red tape on permit procedures, which comprises reducing opposition on the local level by having a more inclusive approach. Energy communities is the buzzword there, which also means higher auction volumes, things like that, more landscapes reserved for renewables. All these things have been decided in the so-called Easter package and afterwards already in 2022. So become more independent through renewable energies, remain economic in terms of use of energy in general. And of course, we also are working on our partnerships with the Gulf region, inter alia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and others. Partnerships also with, for example, the US or Canada, so countries with which we've been having close relations before.
But all of those relationships seem to be about how much fossil fuels can I get from you, rather than, I mean, there's a little talk of hydrogen in Abu Dhabi and UAE, but the predominant amount of you have to replace 100+ billion cubic feet of gas from Russia. That's going to be a lot of fossil fuel partnerships.
Well, it's about 56 BCM at the height of imports.
To Germany, 100 to Europe, right?
Yeah, Germany has a consumption of about a little less than 100, had a consumption before the crisis. Right. BCM. No, of course, we are talking in the short term also about, in particular, LNG supply. But we are always also talking about hydrogen, and in particular green hydrogen, although as a bridging solution, gray hydrogen would also be acceptable. And in fact, our LNG terminals, those that are financed by the German government, they have to be H2 ready, meaning that they have to be constructed such as being able to switch to green hydrogen as soon as it is available.
One of the puzzling things, decisions, and there's many about Germany's decisions last year. One was the sort of scaling up more of coal-fired power plants rather than sustaining the nuclear facilities or returning some of the nuclear power plants. Why was that decision made? And do you think it makes sense? And what is the outlook for that in the year ahead? More coal and further removal of nuclear?
Germany decided to phase out nuclear in 2011. And our last 3 reactors running in 2022 should have been shut down by the end of 2022. However, it was decided to prolong their operation until 15th of April 2023 at a lower level to get us through the first winter and to save gas during the first winter without Russian gas. There will not be a prolongation after that, so that will be the end of nuclear power in Germany. I personally am convinced that this is the right decision. For one, final storage, the issue of final storage has been solved by nobody yet.
Final storage of nuclear waste.
Of nuclear waste, absolutely. And second, I think what we see in Zaporizhzhia right now, which is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, being under the control of Russian warriors, makes you realize how vulnerable this technology is in times of crisis, and that you can never exclude crisis. So I think that's a good thing. Of course, the ramping up of coal-fired power plants, lignite-fired power plants, taking them out of the reserve and putting them back into the market is bad news for the climate. That's true. But it's a bridge. It's a bridge. So I would assume that we step out of that at the latest by 2024. And when we are ready to substitute, to have more gas, coming in particular from LNG, but also to substitute gas by green hydrogen, gray hydrogen at that time.
If we just wrap up, Christina, with your thoughts for what might be the biggest challenge that Germany faces, energy challenge in the year ahead. Black swan events came last year, but what we can see, you mentioned in some of your earlier comments that the winter of 23-24 remains a big question mark. I'm wondering, what do you think is the big challenges yet Germany needs to overcome in 2023 so that this energy security crisis doesn't become an existential threat to the German economy?
Well, it will be crucial, of course, to secure the amounts of, in particular, gas necessary to continue not only warming, heating for citizens, but also satisfy operational demands of the German industry. And the government is very much working on that, working at energy efficiency incentives at the same time. And as I said, depending a little bit on the weather and a little bit on the Chinese economy, but also very much on our ability to become more energy efficient faster. This will run smoothly, or maybe not so smoothly.
Yes, smoothly or not so smoothly. A lot of variables to play, but you'd have to say so far so good for Europe and for Germany in navigating this really unprecedented energy challenge and this geopolitical crisis in Europe, which doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. We have to wrap it up there. It's been an absolute pleasure, Christina Haverkamp, Managing Director of the German Energy Agency, to have you join us on this 13th edition of the Global UAE Energy Forum Year Ahead Energy Outlook. Thank you.
Thank you very much for